Welcome to Studio 23 Nashville. I'm Jennifer Herron, Brian Cumming here, and one of your all-time favorites. You were having a fit over this. Guess who's with us?
The original bass player and still member of Orleans, one of the finest bands ever. I'm so glad to have Lance Hoppen with us today.
Welcome to Studio 23 Nashville with your hosts, Jennifer Herron and Brian Cumming. Today's very special guest from Orleans, Lance Hoppen.
Well, welcome to Studio 23 Nashville. Brian and myself are thrilled to be sitting next to this guy. He created so much magical music over the years. 45 years, right? The band together, is that right?
Well, we'll let Lance give
us
the
all right.
final.
Let's go back to 1972, New York. You're 17 years old.
Well, I was 18 years old.
Okay.
Let's get the facts.
Legal.
Yeah, in 1972, Orleans was a fledgling trio. John Hall, my older brother Larry Hoppen, and Wells Kelly. And they were that way for 9 months as I completed high school. They were fantastic and unique. But they felt constrained by the trio format. They wanted to do more double guitar, which became a signature thing. And so they needed somebody, and I guess there's a little nepotism worked in my favor. I got the audition, and nobody said no. And so they let me in the band in October of that year. I think my first gig was actually Halloween night of 72, and then I turned 19. So not 17, but just straight out of high school.
It had to be wild in the 70s joining this band Orleans with a big following already.
They were building our following up and down the East Coast, particularly in New York State and the Thruway circuit. And one of my aspirations was, well, as I recall, I never wanted to be a star. I did want to be a performing musician, making a living at that. And I wanted to connect with my brother and have a band with him. So all that happened right away. I got that right away. I'm 18 and I'm in my brother's band and we're going places.
And so was it full time at that point?
Yeah, so
The gigging. So there was no choice of going to college or squeezing in courses.
I could have gone to college. Could have been valedictorian in my class. I just got disinterested.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's leave it at that. And so I wound up number 3, not number 1. And I had opportunity to go to college, but my parents had gone through Larry going to school begrudgingly. He wanted to be a performer too, and they said, hey, you have to have a backup. And so he went for music education, and he quit twice. They talked him into going back. So anyway, after he was done, when it came my turn, they said, hey, if you don't want to go,
he fought your fight.
Don't go.
Yeah.
And so I didn't go, and I just went out into the world, and there you go.
Yeah, rock and roll.
We would go, we'd play 3 or 4 nights in a club in Rochester or something. We'd play like a block in Ithaca, and then we'd come back on Monday and we would sit around John's kitchen table and who'd hand in receipts for tolls and things. And at the end, we'd divvy up the money, and I'd go home with $125 for the week. And I was a rich man. It's like, that was my rent, right? The 1 week, and then the other 3 weeks were for whatever. And that's all you needed in 1972 as an 19-year-old.
Yeah. Living in the city, or?
No, living in Woodstock.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
John had lived in the city, and because he had success with Half Moon as the B-side of Pearl, being Bobby McGee from Janis Joplin. He made a bunch of money from the royalties because a single sold and Pearl, the album, sold, and so he made a bunch of money. So they moved out of the city and up to Woodstock, and that's where we rehearsed in his basement. And there's some really, really great black and white shots from that very first month in his basement and at that time.
I have an artifact from the early days.
You do. You have.
I love it.
This is the first Orleans album.
Correct.
I noticed, all right, and on the back.
The pictures.
I don't know if we can do a close-up
Those are
or
great.
whatever. Anyway, young Lance, curly hair, his brother Larry, John Hall,
Wells Kelly.
And I noticed in the inside it talks about a lot of credits, and a lot of the credits are people like Levon Helm and Richard Manuel, all these, I guess even Taj Mahal was hanging out in Woodstock.
Well, John played rhythm guitar for Taj on tour.
What a gig.
He got a lot of tutelage from Taj, So
I bet.
that was it.
I bet.
There's a lot of information in there that some of it credits me with organ and piano and percussions things I never played. which is okay, but it's not true.
Well, how about the scene in Woodstock? I mean, you were hanging, the band was living there, and a lot
Yeah,
of
in
other musicians.
'72, I mean, on any given night, there were 3 clubs going, and you could go see David Sanborn or Will Lee's band, or
Oh,
I mean, it was just, and of course Dylan was still living there. The band lived there, and they didn't come out all the time, but Butterfield was in the bar all the time. It's like that.
yeah.
It was just a hot.
I know
band.
Robbie
It was-
Dupree, some
Robbie
other-
was
that
there.
whole
Robbie and I were
scene.
very, very close. We shared houses together.
Yeah,
We bar hopped together. Yeah.
yeah. I believe it.
This is before he had hits. Before he was
Okay.
Robbie Dupree.
Yeah, oh yeah, he was on the same circuit, playing a lot of the Turnpike.
He had a band
circuit.
called the Striders, and I would often sit in with them whenever I was home.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me ask you a question, because
Yeah.
when we announced that Lance Hoppen was going to be here, you said, "Oh my gosh, I love the band Orleans. I'm going to pull out all of my vinyl." What was it that grabbed your attention? What was it that drew you into
know,
that band?
I think as a musician, I just knew what it was involved in playing and singing and performing, just the technicalities. And Orleans was just so good. They were such good players. I mean, John or Larry were both such fine lead players that they could have been just fine in another band. But when they put all that together, and they sang really well together, and they worked out, and they had written all these songs. So everything that you were hearing was not only excellently done, but it was also fresh and original. It was all stuff they had created, and it was also just a little bit more sophisticated than. I mean, I think that's part of I remember John making a comment. I worked with John Hall. I got later on when he had a solo career, so I got a little bit more. I was a fan. He influenced my guitar playing. But he said once, he made a comment about music like the Cars, for example. Rock and roll that goes. He said it's the even eighth notes. Like where's the flow? Where's the the stuff that John plays is so alive in music, and I think that you could make a point musicologically that New Orleans, it was the source of this kind of feel good second line, blah 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 blah. Little Feat carried on that torch very well. That really is a much richer rhythmic palette than dum dum tick 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 tick.
Yeah, I get it.
And then John, you just hear it. I mean, I'm sure Larry. I wasn't as familiar with his playing, but they just fit so well together.
Yeah. Well, there was a real magic to the trio and the original quartet.
Yeah.
That since those days, it's never been that. Each version of the band as it evolved, from the trio to the quartet to the quintet with Jerry Marotta to the later versions, each one had its strengths, but there was this real magic to the interplay between John, Larry, and Wells, and I was there hanging on for dear life,
Yeah, I got that sense.
trying to root it down
Yeah.
so they could just fly, and fly they did.
Yeah, and Wells deserves a lot of credit as a force of energy. The drummer, and he
Fantastic.
played well, and he also was a writer and could play some guitar and some keys. And in the original trio, he was letting other people play drums so that he could do his other stuff. But basically, the strength in the quartet that you're talking about was 2 great singer guitar players, Larry and John, and you were definitely holding on at the bottom. But Wells is not your average drummer. He wasn't just playing
Back
drums
there,
for them. He was
yeah.
a whole force of energy that was up to their level, and egging them on. You could just sense the communication that he was. It might as well have been a guitar, but he was just driving them. He just really pushed.
So that's what led Stephen, whatever his name is, in Rolling Stone to say that Orleans is the best unrecorded band in the country.
Oh, was that when it was a trio?
Yeah, so this is before
You
even
got a deal.
recording. It was like
Yeah, there were a
that's the
lot of
quartet.
years before you recorded then, right?
No,
The trio recorded?
no, it started in '72. We
Okay.
recorded the first album in the summer of '73. But
Okay.
but even before there was a record,
Yeah.
there was acknowledgement that this is something special. And then, so the first album is it's very raw. It was done quickly. And it has it, and it for some people it's the best thing because it's that cult first thing, right? And then, but a little later on, when we went from ABC to Asylum, and we had Chuck Plotkin producing us, and he did some of Springsteen's album. And anyway, Chuck was a great producer, so we saw ourselves kind of as players who sang, and he saw us as singers who played. And so it was a different take on things, and he put together, he wasn't a player or a singer, he was a student of music.
Yeah.
And so he could feel things and know when it was working, not working, and analyze and feed it back in a way
Yeah.
to us, in a way we could accept and then modify. So he made his case and sculpted some really fine hit records that have lasted the test of time. Dance
Yeah.
With Me, Still the One. These were not things that we thought were going to be hits. They were just songs among songs.
All right, let's talk about the hits when we come back on Studio 23 Nashville.
Hickman County, Tennessee. It feels a lot like home, or how home should feel. Come by, sit a spell. Soak in the goodness that inspired Minnie Pearl to write about this special place. Visit Hickman County, Tennessee's hidden treasure. Do you want to win friends and influence people? Don't buy a book. Advertise on Studio 23 Nashville. It's easy. Just contact us at studio23nashville@gmail.com.
We're going to be doing a song called Daredevil Heart, and when I was learning this, it seemed like there was a very distinct portrait of somebody with a kind of a wild character. Can you tell me a little about the song?
Right, so roadies are often singer-songwriters themselves, players who just haven't been able to make a living at it, or they wind up there. So I was on tour with Susie Vargas in the early 90s, and the lighting guy, we had a crew of two, so it was like jack of all trades. But anyway, his name was David Hamilton, and he had a half-finished song, this song,
Yeah.
where he had a verse and this melodic idea, right? Something like that. And he brought it to me. I said, well, that's really good. Let's finish that. So it was one of my earlier things here in town to write at all. Oh, I don't write a lot. I think I write well, but I haven't been very productive like the way writers are, right? They write. Anyway, David brought me this song. I appreciated it. I've put my stamp on it along with him. And it stood up the test of time.
Yeah, I really like it. And it's kind of unusual the way the chorus kind of pours out of the end of the verse. It just says Daredevil Heart. And
Yeah, those songs where the chorus is in the verse, that's pretty hooky stuff.
Yeah, it's very enjoyable. Well, we're going to be playing a little guitar melody here.
We're going to try and play it right, too.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2. She'd be lost without the danger, couldn't live without the fear. She just has to talk to strangers, though their intentions are quite clear. She's a victim in the making of her death-defying art. I guess I'll never understand Daredevil Heart. I can't say I really blame her that she plays romance roulette, but there's that bullet in the chamber, the one that hasn't found her yet. She's addicted to the gamble, and though she thinks she's playing smart, she's just a prisoner of her own daredevil heart. How many chances is she gonna take? Even a brave daredevil's heart can break. Before her luck runs out, maybe she ought to think about daring to settle down with me. 'cause it's me she always runs to when her game starts falling apart. Like a fool I risk my own daredevil heart. And it's me she's gonna run to when it comes to the crying part. And like a fool I risk my own daredevil heart. Daredevil heart. Daredevil heart.
I have to say, you have to have a little bit of a daredevil heart to try this with all those parts, but it's exciting to hear the intricate lines working together. It reminds me of some really fine pop music, like the band that you've been working with for
45 years now.
Man, it really does. It has a flavor. It's that real up. It reminds me, maybe Dance With Me or some of those.
Yeah,
You know, it's kind of similar.
Obviously I've assimilated a lot from
Yeah.
being in the band, but
Yeah.
also this record, the Conjuring album,
Yeah.
for me is to expose what my part in it is, because often what I do is hidden
Yeah.
in the fabric, not
Absolutely,
obvious
yeah.
at all.
Yeah, and that's an attribute of a good bass player and a good musician who fits in and is not sticking out
Always
on
the
purpose.
bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing, which is what has been my lot in life. Generally speaking, I always wind up being the right-hand man. I always wind up being the band leader. I always wind up being the and that's fine. I'm fine with that. I'm really fine with that. But this record was about collecting these undocumented works of mine and putting them in a life statement. Not so much to sell it, to document it, and have it done the way I hear it. And clearly, this is if you want to know who I am, what I do, this is it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Lance, my impression is that you have kind of found Nashville more of a home than any other member of Orleans.
Yeah, well, let's see. Orleans came to Nashville in '85.
Mm-hmm. And signed a deal.
Yeah, so what had happened was we had our first 5 years, and then the band, exploded. John left, everything fell apart. Larry and I and Wells put it back together. We had a hit with Love Takes Time. We had 2 other guys in the band. That was short-lived, maybe 2-3 years, and then the 80s were really unkind to us. First half of the 80s, we had a few rosters in there. We worked and worked and worked, but it was kind of dog on the trail, right? In '84 was when Wells had his unfortunate rock and roll death.
Yeah.
That precipitated a memorial service for him in Ithaca, New York. I was unable to attend, but both Larry and John did. So after 7 years of estrangement, they were on the same stage together. And it was magic for them. And they buried the hatchet, and they said, well, let's see what we can do. And there was an open invitation from Tony Brown here in Nashville, world famous producer and mogul, that if we ever got it together, he would give us a deal. So we did demos. They invited me back, right? We did demos, the 3 of us, and then.
Was it more steered toward country when you come to Nashville? Or?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it's pop music, and as you know, country was moving in that direction, and this was the mid '80s. It was, so we got this deal with MCA Universal, and Tony Brown was the producer. David Hungate was doing the legwork. Mm-hmm. He was a staff producer, and we made an album called Grown Up Children, struggling all the way with the Nashville method, like it was all session players, it wasn't us.
Yeah, right.
We had a fight to play on our own record, and John got, and then we sang it all. And so it was neither country nor pop. It was neither. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of missed the mark, and it was pre-Restless Heart, which is a great example of how to do that.
Yes.
Great songs, right down the pike between country pop, and as you know, they've had hits on both sides. When She Cries, Tell Me What You Dream. So that's kind of where we wanted to go, but we didn't make it. But that was our Nashville entree, 85, 86, 87. We put it to bed. Orleans was done again. And I was basically doing nothing. It was a really not good time in my life. I got a phone call, fortuitous phone call in January of 89 from some old friends who turned out to be what I'd become Bailey and the Boys. And Kathy Bailey and Michael Bonagura, I hadn't heard from them in 10 years. And like I say, it was kind of a long story, but basically almost divine intervention. I got this phone call that their guy had quit and they had this big tour and would I come join their band. So I went from please change my life somehow to getting that call to coming here, which absolutely changed my life, like 180, and everything that follows suit emanates from that moment, right? So that's what brought me to Nashville in '89, and yeah, I found my home here.
So you were working with Bailey and the Boys?
Right, and they were at their heyday. They had their string of top tens in the late '80s, early '90s, and I got right on that train at that time.
Yeah.
89, 90, 91, and then I got an opportunity to work for Susie Boggess. So I became her band leader, 92, 93. She won the Horizon Award at that time, and then she took 6 months off, and so it's like, oh boy. So that was weird. And then Orleans kicked back up in a big way. We went to Japan in 94, and I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had been anchored in Susie. So all these things happen for a reason.
Right.
And on and on. So I've been here all that time. I think the last country tour I did was at Andy Griggs when he was first out of the box in 1999, 1980, 98, 99. And it was another lull for Orleans. So these things are like phases, cyclical, right? Right? So 94 we did Japan, 95, 94 we played Woodstock 94, which was the 25th anniversary of Woodstock, and you know, unbelievably huge. It was indescribable. This is one of those rotating stages, right? So you're setting up behind the thing while one act is playing, and then the whole thing suddenly is rotating, and before you know it, you're out in front of 200,000 people. And the PA is humongously big. Like, you can't even imagine how big the sound is. And we play for 25 minutes or something, and we're done. And it's like over before it started. But those are the kind of highlights you remember. We made a record in '95 called Ride, which I think is some of our best work ever. Didn't garner any hits. It's always hard to go back. And we put it again in '97. We put it away. And that's when I toured with Andy Griggs. And then in 2000, we played this amazing show up in Woodstock at Opus 40. It's an outdoor sculpture site. And it was so successful, we got energized again and really never quit from that point on, 2000 forward. And as you know, John left the band, 05, 06. He ran for Congress and won, right? So he left for 5 years. And we had a different guitar player, and so it just keeps evolving. And so this year is our 45th year, John and I working together, and three mainstays, my younger brother Lane, Charlie Morgan, our drummer, Fly Amaro, guitar player who's been in the band twice, in the 80s and then again. Yeah. So that's the brief history, but there's lots of details. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, what do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about your songwriting. You talked about, performing and touring and all this, but you're quite the songwriter, and Nashville is about songwriting. So,
I never thought of myself as a writer. I never even thought of myself so much as an artist. I just thought of myself as a performing player, like a performance artist, right? And I was intimidated by the caliber of writing and the quantity. Yeah. From John and Johanna, and also from Larry and from Wells, and it's like there was no room, right? And so I didn't really have the skill set to boot. I didn't have the inclination, so I didn't write a lot. And it's not like I have written a lot, even by anyone's standards. But when I came to Nashville, I got the bug. I wrote this little ditty called my brain. It's on my record. I should know what it is. Oh, Don't Play With Matches. Don't Play With Matches. It's a country song. It's got, Mama Told Me This, and it's got some cliche stuff, right? But it was my first country song, so that was in 90, it was like 90. But it's a good song. And so in 2016, when I went to make my solo album, finally, it made it to the record. Right? I had a demo that I liked, and I recreated that in a way, and so it made it there. And so I've written some stuff over these last few decades. So this Conjuring album, this solo album of mine from 2016, it's 15 tracks, but it's the best I've got, and there's not a lot more beyond that. So I don't claim to be a writer. I mean, Stevie Wonder's a writer. And then there's people who write songs. So I'm a guy who writes some songs. But my career is more about playing, supporting. But I'm pleased about the record, the way it turned out, and I'm pleased that it exposes, for better or worse, who I am, what I do. Because often it's just hidden in the fabric of the whole, as in Orleans. It's like you can't really, you can kind of pick out me on occasion. That was a cool bass lick or whatever, but it doesn't really speak to my input, because it comes out as a whole,
Well, I like that you have your voice in your solo project, because I find your music very inspiring.
Thank you.
And you have changed some lives, as you've mentioned, to touch some people with the words of your music.
That's the point of music, is to reach people in their heart, So if we can do that, sure.
And I was sort of surprised to hear that some of the songs that you're doing, that you've written, are part of the Orleans repertoire at this point.
Yeah, No More Than You Can Handle, which we've played, is dear to me. I'm a co-writer. But it's not only, it's a title track from this compilation, this 40-year best of compilation. It's the title track. It's something Larry and I and Charlie Morgan, that was the band really that cut it in 2011. But it's also on my solo album, because it's a really important piece of the fabric. And it's important in Orleans' show as well. It's a moment. It's a real moment where people get touched in their hearts. So that's important to me.
Y'all really have a timeless sound. So I imagine that you're finding new audiences all the time, and folks that are rediscovering even some of the past stuff, like this vinyl over here.
Yeah, the millennials are finding it, right? And that's very gratifying when a millennial steps up and engages me by email and such, and then comes to a show and shows their face, and you can tell they're really into it. So that's not even our generation's kids; it's their kids, right? So it's passed down, and that's very gratifying.
Well, I can imagine a crowd getting inspired by that particular song at that moment. God never gives you more
than you can handle. Because
handle.
people they have tough times,
But it seems like maybe your influence is more than you think on the band, because that is a moment that probably wouldn't have happened in an Orleans show in 1973.
No, I wasn't capable of it, nor was there room for it. These days, of course. So in recent years. When John left, it was Larry and me and Fly, and my brother Lane and Charlie on drums. But tragically, Larry passed in 2012, which was devastating. I mean, completely mind-bogglingly. What do you make of that? That precipitated the 30 days most difficult in my life. So I had to make quick decisions, and I quickly decided. And we had about 8 more shows to do for 2012. So what do you do with that? And the question was, the question became not, are we going to do it? It's how are we going to do it? So the team collected, and people threw in, former band members filled in spots. John came back. A lot, people stepped up with contribution and support, and we finished the year. And amazingly, I was done. It was like 40 years were done. The last gig we did was here in town at the Mercy Lounge, And it was a benefit for my brother's kids, my nieces. And not only did Orleans play it, but Kathy Bailey, John Ford Coley, Henry Paul, Pete Huttlinger, Jonelle Mosser. I mean, I'm probably, and more, I'm leaving people out, but all these people stepped up to be in the show and lend their talents. It was well received, and we raised some money, and but I was done. So, fortuitously, an acquaintance, a business acquaintance, who I had not met till after Larry passed, told me that if we wanted to continue, he thought he could make it happen. This is a guy named Len Fico. He was a label owner and budding manager. So he told me that in August, and November came, and I was done. And wouldn't you know it, but he called me right after that and said, if you want a tour for 2013, I've got it for you guys. If you want to keep going, we can do it. And that turned into the Sail Rock Tour of 2013, where Orleans was the house band, particularly Charlie Morgan and me. I was the music director for the entire tour, but it was Christopher Cross, us, Firefall, Player, Robbie Dupree, John Ford Coley, Gary Wright, Al Stewart, and we were the backbone.
Yeah.
And everybody did their 2, 3, 5 hits, right? It was 2 hours of magic, and those crowds loved it. They knew every word, and it was great. So that kept us going, and then 2014, 15, 16, and then here we are, 2017, year 45, and we already have half a dozen gigs booked for next year, 46.
Gosh,
Weird.
the outpouring of love continues. I gotta get some more stories for you coming up in just a few here on Studio 23 Nashville.
Straighten up and find right.
Now available, Come Out Swingin', the new CD by the Brian Cumming Jazz Quartet. Come Out Swingin' is available at studio23nashville.com and all major digital retailers.
Sing, come out swinging.
Come Out Swingin' by the Brian Cumming Jazz Quartet. Get yours today. Be the envy of the neighborhood. Make your friends jealous. Be the first on your block to get official swag from Studio 23 Nashville, Pinkerton Productions, and Brian Cumming. Just visit our store at the bottom of the page and order yours today.
All right, well, Lance, this next song, Start From Where You Are, sounds like it's got a pretty serious spiritual message, maybe from experience.
Partly, yeah, all the lyrics are infused with that, but this was a co-write with a friend of mine named Sean Galloway, with whom I've written a lot of songs. And Sean brings me pretty fleshed out lyrical ideas.
Yeah.
This particular thing, Start From Where You Are, we went to this seminar, this guru, this wealth guy. It was more than wealth, but it was like, it was that kind of thing, it was self-help kind of stuff. And Sean's always picking up on this stuff. He writes a lot of theme songs for different organizations. He noticed they didn't have any music for sale. They had everything for sale. It's all about selling. But they had no music. So he said we should pitch them to do a CD worth of stuff based on their own teachings.
Yeah.
His own teachings, right? So we did that. We wrote 10 songs for this project. This is one of them. And the irony of it is this guy was a wealth guru.
Yeah.
And twice confirmed the deal, and even the second time with a handshake in person.
Yeah.
And never funded it, claiming that his business was not doing so well, and it wasn't part of the mainstream of his business, and so on and so forth. So we wrote all this material, and none of it saw the light of day, except we'd done a few demos.
Yeah.
And this came, actually the recording on my album is the demo I did of this song, which survived the project. That didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, whoever the guru is, I hope he can hear us doing the song, and maybe he'll get another chance someday to connect. Maybe not.
This has actually found its own home in a way.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
people who hear it, who are in crisis or turmoil, or have had bad things happen in their lives, you know, loved ones lost or diseases, it really helps them, and that's enough. That's what this song is for.
It really is. I mean, it's a pretty essential message.
Yeah, a building block. So it goes
All right.
exactly like this. no shame in crying, letting go of what's been done. The debt, the loss, the past mistakes, in time you'll overcome. Though the messages of childhood left their mark upon your mind, when you bring them to awareness, you can leave them all behind. Start from where you are, one thought at a time. Let those tears release the fears, while its shadows keep you blind. Start from where you are, trust the dream within your heart. This moment is your present, so start from where you are. You may be feeling fragile, lost and all alone. We're all here to help. You don't have to do this on your own. And as we begin to weed your garden and water your new seeds, the life you knew will grow into what you're willing to believe. Start from where you are, one step at a time. It's amazing how right here, right now, the universe provides. Start from where you are, trust the dream within your heart. This moment is your present, so start from where you are. There's no time like the present for you to claim your wealth. It's up to you to seize the moment. It doesn't happen by itself. Start from where you are, one step at a time. It's amazing how right here, right now, the universe provides. Start from where you are, trust the dream within your heart. This moment is your present, so start from where you are. This moment is your present, it's ready to open when you are.
Whoa, that is beautiful. That's a lovely song.
You know, so in 2010, Sean, my co-writer, submitted that song to an organization called the Empower Music. They do a thing called the POSI Awards, Positive Music Awards. It's not a Grammy category, although they're trying to move in that direction. And it's not so much about genre style, musical style, it's about lyrical content.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
about
the
being
message.
uplifted in some
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
And it takes a lot of different forms. Anyway, it was one of, there's several categories, and it was a finalist, one of 3 songs in a certain category. So suddenly we were like nominated for a thing at this convention, music thing. And I had nothing to show for it. I had no collection of my works in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So I put together 10 cuts, some Orleans, some outside Orleans. All that I sang had my signature on it, including this one. This was the title track, and I just made these things at home to have something to bring to the convention, so people could walk away with. So that was the first solo album, I guess you could say. It was a compilation of things already done back in 2010, as opposed to the Conjuring album, which is start from scratch. More, full.
But you were starting from where you were.
That's right.
Yeah,
there you
it
go.
was-
How prophetic.
And I keep going back to the wild 70s. I keep envisioning all this,
Yes.
and I saw this album cover, and I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah,
check
I'll
this
check.
out. Look at Orleans. Okay, which one are you?
I'm over here. I'm hairless.
Oh, look at that hair.
Yeah, that was the LA cut at the time. At least I had contact lenses by then.
Tell
Oh,
us about
you had
this
some
cover.
glasses in the days,
That's
yeah.
right.
This
All
was
right.
kind of the deal in the 70s, right? Do these covers like that?
No, okay,
Oh.
here's the story everyone wants to know. I mean, as you probably know, it was deemed one of the 100 worst album covers of all time by somebody online.
Yeah.
It even got the distinction of being the cover of the hardcover book of the 100 worst covers of all time.
Oh.
Although I have to tell you, the other 99 are just atrocious.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it.
But
I mean, it's a concept, you know, eyes open, eyes closed.
right, well, that's what most people miss. What happened here was the label, with no idea, sent us over to the studio of Norman Seeff, famous rock photographer, come back with an album cover. There was no idea. It was just go there and get shots, right? So we did poses and stuff, and he had models walking around, and there was wine, and it's like that. And it wasn't happening. So Norman says, "You guys are so stiff. Take your shirts off. See what happens," right? So we did, and then he lined us up, and we took different poses, and then okay. But it's only shirts. It's not like we're naked.
Yeah.
And so we got this cover. But if you'll notice, John is eyes closed and we're all eyes open. And if you flip it, it's reverse.
Yeah.
And the title is Waking and Dreaming. So it's a two-sided thing. And this is pre-Photoshop. So this is airbrushing. We were all open or all closed.
Oh.
So they inverted John's head on the photos
His entire head.
to make it into a concept. Okay, so it's got a lot of notoriety for not much reason. And if you look at Pablo Cruz's album of the same year or within a year, they're butt naked, kneeling. They're absolutely naked, and nobody makes any bones about that. Like, why not, right? So
You guys can't get no respect.
people still send me that, and they go, "Oh, look at this!" Like they've discovered it or something.
Well, speaking as an Orleans fan who had seen the quartet and really loved the band, I was curious about the addition of Jerry Marotta as a drummer while Wells was still in the band.
Right. So the prior album, if you want to get that out,
Yeah.
Let There Be Music, was quartet. Excuse me. But Chuck Plotkin, the producer, he was a very stickler on time, on meter, right? And Wells was a little wild, so his style was not always spot on metronomic. And a couple of these cuts, like Business as Usual in particular, I remember he brought in another drummer to anchor Wells. So that was the way that was done.
It wasn't to replace him.
No, it's to control it. It's to anchor it, so that it wasn't.
So they actually recorded
frantic.
2 drum tracks on Business as Usual?
Yeah, and there might be others, but that strikes at me. So that's one thing. But Wells was more than a drummer. He was a fantastic drummer, but he wanted to play keyboards and he wanted to do his guitar thing, so his demand in this time frame was, let's expand more. Let's get a drummer so he can be freer.
Yeah.
And that's when Jerry Marotta entered the picture.
Yeah.
Jerry was 20 years old. He'd never had a big gig before. His brother Rick, though, was, legendary, world famous, played for Linda Ronstadt and later Steely Dan and everybody. So he was welcome, very welcome. And he wound up, among other things, playing on Still the One. That day when we cut that session, Wells was sick. He was ill. He didn't even come to the studio.
Wow.
So we cut that four-piece with Jerry. So that's Jerry on Still the One. And Wells later added a tambourine and a bass vocal,
Well, Still the One is such a magnificent record. I still hear it played publicly, but I'm just in such admiration of the vocal arrangement toward the end when it does that kind of 8 days a week, 2/1 chord progression. And it sounds like there's more than 4 voices going on there.
Well, there was, doubling and tripling going on in those days. That was
Yeah.
fairly standard stuff. But you have to remember, there was no auto-tuning. There was no nothing.
Yeah.
You had to sing in tune.
Yeah.
And we all sang on the same mic. It wasn't like everybody got it.
Which is even harder.
So you have to blend.
Yeah.
You have to be in tune. You have to
Yeah.
phrase together. You have to do
Yes.
all that. And then you have to do it again. You have to match it.
Yes.
And so it
was
is
it.
pretty amazing.
But are there parts on Still the One, other than doubling, that are that you can't do when you do it live?
Well, and when in the a cappella thing, when it breaks down,
Yeah.
there's more there than even us, even the 4 of us can
Yeah,
do.
that's
can
what I
do.
thought,
And incidentally, the bass vocal in that a cappella, we're the one, we've got,
Yeah.
that's both John and Wells, because they were fighting over intonation.
Yeah.
over notes, one note,
Yeah,
So John insisted on punching into Wells's track so that it would just get.
solidified.
That's the
or
kind of
anchored.
stuff you did back then.
Yeah, yeah. And Chuck was keeping track of all the
It
takes
was
and all
all,
that.
razor blades on tape and punch in, punch out before you erase something important.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's how it was done.
Legendary. Oh my gosh.
One other
And
quick
what
story.
about those guitar duet?
Guitar, yeah. John would, for the most part, on the double stuff that's become signature, John would create a solo in pieces or parts, until it was all done, and then it would be Larry's job to figure
Fine.
out how to harmonize to it.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Yeah, and phrase it, and his job
The whole
was to
bit.
figure what goes with it.
He
And
was
then
the
once
Dickie
it
Betts.
was done, like the whole track,
Yeah.
is still the one, the center
Yeah.
solo thing, that became, okay, we have to play that live. So everybody, every guitar, like John, Larry, Fly, they've all learned to play that solo,
Yeah,
reproduce it live.
yeah. It's locked in now.
That's how it's done.
Amazing.
I just want to make one other thing clear because it's
Yeah.
not clear. Dance With Me. So
Yeah.
that was recorded in a weird way. Nobody quite knew what to make of it. I remember it was Larry on the Rhodes and John on acoustic guitar.
Yeah,
I think that was it. And we didn't even have click tracks.
yeah.
Okay, so they set it down that way. And then Wells he did the bass drum, and then like maybe the snare drum, and then Phil's, it was like that. It was put together like, how does this really go?
Yeah.
And then the bass part. Well, this is the second recording of Dance With Me. The first recording was on our second album for ABC, which they hated. They hated it. They dropped us. Okay? So, but Let There Be Music and Dance With Me were on that record. Chuck Plotkin, hearing us showcase in New York City, having been dropped from ABC, liked what he heard, loved those songs, got the re-recording rights for those two songs so we could do it again. And with his mentorship, turn Let There Be Music into about hit 40 something, right? And then opened the door for Dance With Me, which was top 5. So in the first recording, again, we didn't know what it was. What is this animal? And so in the bass part, everybody took a shot at it. I took, but it was 1/5. It was simple, obvious. Wells tried it. John.
Yeah.
So then it's like, nah, that's not. And Larry steps up. He goes, boom, boom, boom,
That was him.
boom, and we went, yeah, duh. So he had created that bass part on the earlier recording. So when it came time for that track, even though I have played bass on 99%,
Yeah.
or 99.9% of all Orleans stuff,
Yeah.
that is Larry. So Larry he sang the lead, he played the bass, he created that bass part, he played the Rhodes, he played the melodica solo.
Melodica, yeah. Was that an innovation at the time? Or?
It just was not many people were using them. But
So,
it was like the right thing for that record. So I have to hand it to Larry because John's writing, Larry's interpretation,
Yeah.
and voice. That was the magic.
And that song in particular, I was noticing, looking at all the lyrics printed on the album cover, Dance With Me is a lot shorter than all the other songs. There's fewer lyrics.
It's a simple song.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's beautiful. You
It
know,
is.
pick your feet up and kick your feet. You know,
Right,
it's
there you go.
it's very
Still the
charming.
one was written on a napkin.
Really?
Handed to John by his ex-wife Johanna, writing partner. They wrote both those songs, right?
Yeah.
And many, many, many others.
Yeah.
But it's like, here, can you do something with that? And then 15 minutes later, he had all the changes.
Oh my gosh. That is amazing.
I know. Was Johanna? Did she meet John as a songwriter? I mean, did they start writing together?
They met. She was a writer for the Village Voice.
Ooh.
He was playing downtown, in the Village Cafe Wa.
Yeah.
I guess they met that way. Johanna was assigned to do a story for Janis Joplin,
Oh.
which she did. Janis met them both, suggested that they write songs together, and the first song they wrote was Half Moon.
The first song
That
they wrote, and
together was
Janice
Half
put
Moon.
it on the
B-side of Bobby
her
McGee.
biggest record.
Oh my
Good
God.
And they
grief.
were off and running.
And it's so, I mean, the lives that are intertwined with this history of American pop music and all that, these characters. Wow. Thank you, Lance, for sharing this stuff. This is really rich.
You're welcome.
Definitely.
I'm
We'll
sure-
find out about the future up next on Studio
Yes.
23 in Asheville.
You want to win friends and influence people? Don't buy a book. Advertise on Studio 23 Nashville. It's easy. Just contact us at studio23nashville@gmail.com. Be the envy of the neighborhood. Make your friends jealous. Be the first on your block to get official swag from Studio 23 Nashville, Pinkerton Productions, and Brian Cumming. Just visit our store at the bottom of the page and order yours today.
Lance, I'm sure you've heard this before, but that's an interesting guitar you have there.
Yeah, it's a conversation starter. It's from a company called Babix, B-A-B-I-C-Z.
Is that the guy's name?
Yeah, Jeff Babix.
Who came up with the theories behind this way of stringing?
That's right. He's a boutique guitar builder, although this is a production model. It's not like everyone's made one at a time. And there are a few things about it that are unique, and obviously the bridge, the string arrangement is. It's called a spider for obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And the theory is if you stop strings here, the pressure on the bridge is constantly pulling it forward and up.
Yeah.
But if you push them through, then the pressure is down, sending the resonance into the soundboard and distributing it throughout the soundboard.
Yeah.
So it's a simple idea, but it's unique to him and patented, and
Yeah.
there's some other things. And he's licensed some of this technology to other people.
Yeah.
They make acoustics, they make acoustic electrics, they make great hardware for electric guitars and basses. I've got their bridges on all my basses. But yeah, it's a very cool guitar. Lacquer finish on
Yeah.
wood.
It's very distinctive. And I'm glad to have something so unusual that just really does the job.
I don't even think about it anymore. People
fresh-
go, wow,
yeah.
that's a really cool guitar. Okay.
Well, just in passing, I would just want to say that the Stratocaster means something to me, partly because of Orleans. You know that.
Oh, really?
I know your brother Larry played Strat,
John played
mostly
Strat.
entirely, and John a
Yep.
lot. Yeah, they both played them very well and wove the sound and the style of the guitar into the Orleans sound.
Yeah, and I'm a Fender bass player.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
all the way. And
Yeah.
so we're a Fender band.
Yeah. You know, but my own journey was looking up to Orleans as a band that was really doing a great job, and then I got to meet John and work with him, and then we've worked together in Nashville through the years. So it's really been a cool, and this song in particular is a chance to bring the Stratocaster into action.
Right. So this song is particularly meaningful to me. No More Than You Can Handle. This was a title that Larry had, my brother Larry. For those who don't know, he was the radio voice of Orleans. He sang the hits. He was multi-instrumentalist. He was prodigious and the backbone of that band for 40 years. And he was the only guy who never missed an Orleans gig in 40 years. Like John ducked out a few times.
Did you?
I came to Nashville. I missed a few, you know.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
so,
Okay.
but he never missed a gig, and so it hung on him. He passed away suddenly in July of 2012. In the year prior, 2010, 2011, Orleans was attempting to revitalize by doing what we do best, is write songs that are what have now become that niche that's both country and pop.
Yeah.
And you can think of Restless Heart or Lady Antebellum or Keith Urban even, and it's pop song. I mean, that are right on the line of they can go on either way.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to write with some Nashville writers who had some track record. And I'm thinking, yeah, guys, you know, like songs like
When She Cries.
When She Cries,
Yeah.
right, by Restless Heart. And so we wound up writing with one of the co-writers of that, Sonny Lemaire from the band Exile. So Larry and I and Sonny sat down to do this song. Larry had a title, and he had this full-blown lyric about no more than you can handle, but it was about the Gulf oil spill, right? And Sonny says, "I do not want to write that song. I don't want to write that song
not
either."
those-
So we threw the whole thing out except for the title and started from scratch and came up with this. And so it's one of the two last songs I got to write with him before he passed, and it's even more poignant and ironic that it would be his title, because he did succumb to a perfect storm of life pressures. And it was more than he could handle. So,
Did you get a sense of Larry's own spiritual struggles and so forth, like as this song kind of indicates, you know, that how much can you handle, and you know, did the song really express something of him when you all had finished
Yeah,
co-writing?
well, we all had a piece. We all
Yeah.
had pieces of it.
Yeah.
I remember specifically, the best idea Sonny had, and this. I don't, you can never retroactively remember exactly who did what.
Yeah.
It's all
yeah.
synergistic, but collectively, yeah, we came up with this, and my stamp is on it as well. I know the pieces that I put in,
Yeah.
and but anyway, it's very dear to my heart, and
Yeah. And Orleans does it.
Orleans does it, and it's
Yeah.
become It's become essential to
Yeah.
our modern
I'm
show.
glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. God never gives you more than you can handle, though sometimes it feels like he tries. What don't kill you will make you stronger, so hold on a little longer. God never gives you more than you can handle. God never gives you more than you can handle. I don't know a soul without problems who hasn't had a broken heart. Can't find a reason to hope. You're at the end of your rope. Sometimes it's just the way things are. Though I don't know all of the answers, I know enough to hold on to my dreams and breathe the next breath. Take the next step, no matter how hopeless it seems. God never gives you more than you can handle, though sometimes it feels like she tries. What don't kill you will make you stronger, so hold on a little longer. God never gives you more than you can handle. God never gives you more than you can handle. When the weight of the world's on your shoulders and the burden's got you weary to the bone, when you've done all you can do, just remember that you don't have to carry it all on your own. God never gives you more than you can handle. God never gives you more than you can handle. So even when you're afraid, hold on, trust your faith and hold on. Help is on the way, so hold on. If just for one more day, hold on. God never gives you more than you can handle. All is well, and this too shall pass. God never gives you more than you can handle. More than you can handle. More than you can handle. God never gives you more. No more than you can handle.
So Orleans is still together. You're still touring, right?
Amazingly, this
Yeah.
is year 45, and we have gigs booked for next year, 46. Yeah, there's no telling.
You also are playing with some other bands too.
Really cool. Larry had been he organized this band called RPM, Rock and Pop Masters, which was killer, world-class backup player, like players who could play just about anything, and then frontmen from various bands. And there was a stable of a couple dozen of them, Felix Cavalieri, on and on and on. But anyway, I was late to that party, but I got a slot. Well, when he passed, then the main client of that asked if I could take over leading the ship. So I went from the bottom of the last guy in, bottom of the rung, to being the band leader, which is good because I'm the weakest player on stage, especially because I'm not normally the bass player. So I've honed my guitar skills and percussion and other things. And sometimes I get to play bass. But that band, like for example, we do an enormous show every March. Next year, it's 8 singers always, and they're always different. Joe Elliott from Def Leppard is the headliner. Johnny Van Zant is the second. So Leonard Skinner. So that's the kind of thing. So I get to do that. That's really great. And in smaller versions and larger versions. So, and I have here in town 3 buddies of mine, and I have an Elton John tribute band called the Rocket Men, which sounds kind of lame, but it's really very cool.
And where are these bands that you're playing with? All over the place?
We
All over the
convene
map?
wherever we
Yeah.
need to convene. Yeah, a lot of the homework is done at home, each of us, and we show up and we nail it, and it's really, really great.
That is
So going forward, there's that. There's Orleans stuff. There's what's called now Rock Unlimited, and those gigs. There's the Rocket Men. I had a gig with Kathy Bailey and Michael, just the other night.
yeah.
Occasionally, I work for Felix Cavalieri as a sub in his band, and I played church every Sunday. And so it's like that. To learn anything you want to know about Orleans and to see CD product and such, it's orleansonline.com. And I just do want to plug this compilation, 40 Years Best Of. It's a double disc, both studio and live. My Conjuring album, quite pleased with it. I love this photo too. Isn't that great?
Whoa. Dramatic.
That is
It's
nice.
just something a photographer happened to catch. This is my, my statement of me, finally. And that's also available at orleansonline.com. And you can email me there. Just click on Contact Us and my name, and it comes right to me. In fact, just about any way you communicate with us comes right to me, and I answer it all.
So you're kind of the
I'm the
administrator, taking care of business.
Yeah, my organizational skills are probably better than my musical skills. Goes a long way.
Are you good on social media? You're a
I
Facebooker?
hate social media. I don't even go there. I don't do it. I know I should. I know I'm supposed
Okay,
to.
so he won't friend you, but he might email you back.
I lurk.
Yeah.
I lurk, but I don't comment.
One of those, yeah. I love it. You got the scoop then. This is the guy to talk to. Lance Hoppen, it has been wonderful to visit with you, and what a legacy. And it continues. Great music. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us.
Thank you for
Great
having me.
having you.